So for the Rams, they were coming in having every right to be the utmost confident because, well, like I said, they were the reigning, defending, undisputed Super Bowl champions of Super Bowl 56. But, in free agency, they were like tight on money. They were tight on draft picks. And as such, they lost a couple of key players like left tackle Andrew Whitworth, who retired a champion. And they lost a couple pieces in free agency. The most notable one being linebacker Von Miller to the Buffalo Bills in the offseason. But despite all that, the Rams had a good shot at the time to repeat. And that's how I kind of saw it because of how weak the NFC was shaping up to be. You had a lot of uncertainty at quarterback. There were a lot of teams that didn't really feel like playoff contenders going into the season. There were only like a few teams that felt like they can really compete in the playoffs and make a deep run at the Super Bowl at the time. The Rams were one of them. So, despite all the losses in free agency that the Rams had, they still had a good shot at winning the division and maybe making another run at a title. Boy, were we wrong about that. Were we really wrong about that one? Because from opening night, things kind of just spiral slowly but surely. Opening night for the Super Bowl champions was a complete disaster. The losses of Andrew Whitworth and guard Austin Colbert to the Panthers made the offensive line a shell of its former self. They couldn't pass protect. It allowed relentless pressure from the Bills, and Matthew Stafford got sacked 7 times. And they lost big. The worst loss by a defending Super Bowl champion on opening night as they got blown out by the Bills. But the Rams were able to bounce back with 2 straight wins over the Falcons and the Cardinals. But those two teams weren't that great. But they were undone by only winning 3 more games after that. So for the Rams, it wasn't that great of a season for them. But a lot of that had to contribute to a lot of things. Defensively, the pass rush was pretty much back to where it was prior to getting Von Miller last season. Aaron Donald was back to being a one-man crew, and by doubling him, there was pretty much no one else to help him out. No one else to pretty much rush the passer, per se. Jalen Ramsey was still one of the best shutdown corners in the NFL, but there's no one else opposite of him. And, well, yes, I think Kobe Durant at the other corner position was, I think he was 50-50. He still has room to grow. I think he has some solid room to grow as a rookie. So maybe give him maybe another year and maybe find someone else to compete with him is a need for the Rams. But linebacker Bobby Wagner performed pretty well in his first season with the Rams in the pass rush and in coverage in the middle of the field, having a Pro Bowl kind of year. Offensively, though, that's where things start to completely spiral out of control. The offensive line underwent multiple different combinations, primarily due to injuries and just simply trying to get something to work, especially when you lost like 2 key linemen in Whitworth and Corbett. Center Brian Allen and tackle Rob Harvestine were okay, but like I said, it's hard to maintain consistency in the offensive line when you're trying to do so many different combinations. The Rams also severely lacked a running game. Like there was like pretty much nothing with Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, who the Rams were trying to trade at the deadline. They couldn't really net anything remotely positive for most of the season. Their big name receiving signing in the offseason, Allen Robinson, he was supposed to be the number 2 option because, well, Odell Beckham Jr., their big signing midseason last year, he tore his ACL and he wasn't expected to play all season. But like in Chicago with Allen Robinson, he massively disappointed. He was pretty much nowhere to be found. He's like a ghost in the passing game. And then you have top receiver Cooper Kupp. He remained the team's most reliable option, but he was lost for the season due to a high ankle sprain after week 10. So that was really unfortunate. It really took away pretty much the whole offense for the Rams. And then it took an even bigger blow with Matthew Stafford. He wouldn't do as well due to the lack of an offensive line, causing an uptick of him just eating the ball and being baited into turnovers. And he would just later go down as well, twice to concussions, and then eventually on IR with a spinal contusion. Backups John Wolford and Bryce Perkins couldn't move the needle in his place that Sean McVay desperately needed. But the Rams made one last gasp as their season wore on. They claimed Baker Mayfield, who was released by the Panthers off waivers just before their Thursday night. Was it week 13? I think it's week 14. It was a December Thursday night game against the Raiders, and Mayfield would lead a comeback win over Vegas. But they didn't really do much after that other than a Christmas Day blowout win over Denver that netted Mayfield a Christmas MVP and got Nathaniel Hackett fired. But other than that, in between, Mayfield was as inconsistent as he was during his time in Carolina, even with the scrubs the Rams had left. So all in all, the Rams limped to becoming the all-time worst Super Bowl champions ever at 5-12, surpassing the 1999 Denver Broncos. But I mean, hey, the ring is the most important thing. And this is coming from a Niners fan. At least, they have the championship, even though, they pretty much blew their load with the money, blew their load with the draft picks, like trading for all these pieces. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you have a very recent Super Bowl championship. I mean, like, I can't talk as a Niners fan. I can't talk shit that much about y'all. You didn't make the playoffs, but you have the ring at the end of the day. You have the championship. So what did we Niners fans get? Oh, yeah, we made the playoffs, but again, we didn't come to our ultimate goal, which was winning the Super Bowl. And yeah, it is what it is. So for the Rams, though, you do have a crap ton of questions to address in the offseason, but you're going to have to do so already being in the negative in terms of salary cap. You have to figure out how to get back into the green because you have like negative $15 million. You're like over the cap. You're like over $15 million in like negative cap space. So you got to figure out who you're going to restructure, which contracts to restructure. I imagine it's going to be Matthew Stafford or Cooper Kupp, or maybe even Aaron Donalds. But either way, you got to figure out how to get back under the cap. The good thing for the Rams is they're getting Sean McVay is coming back, so that's always a good thing for them. Look at some of your key unrestricted free agents. Pretty much it's your whole special teams unit, like kicker Matt Gay, punter Riley Dixon, corner Troy Hill, and probably perhaps their most important free agent, unrestricted, is probably Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Because I think, Matthew Stafford's probably gonna play again in 2023, but it's never an issue, to have Baker Mayfield as an insurance option, I guess. In the event that, maybe he wants to spend another year as a backup to Stafford, get some, maybe learn a valuable lesson, or something. So maybe that's something the Rams want to address in the offseason. Does Baker Mayfield want to re-sign with LA on a cheap deal? Do the Rams want him back, even as a backup? And vice versa. That's the thing that the Rams have to decide. And the Rams should revamp the offensive line. They could really use a left tackle to replace the void left by Andrew Whitworth. They could also use 2 more guards to come in and compete with the ones currently on the roster. They have to find the protection needed to protect the quarterback. They can't have Matthew Stafford, or if it's going to be somebody else, but it is going to be Stafford. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just giving hypotheticals. You can't have Matthew Stafford running for his life, and getting so many sacks because your offensive line couldn't pass protect. You have to use this offseason, even with the little amount of cap space you may have, and they do have a little bit, some of draft picks. You have to use all your resources to invest in the offensive line. And perhaps also find Aaron Donald some help in the pass rush. As mentioned already, the Rams already reverted back to where they already were prior to getting Von Miller. And Aaron Donald was back to being a one-man wrecking crew, unless you're doubling him. So they need someone either right next to him in the interior or someone opposite of him on the other edge to help ease some of that pressure off of him in the pass rush, because he ain't any younger, you know. So you want to help him out. So the good thing for the Rams is that at least half or most of their roster is already locked up into deals. There aren't many decisions to be made in free agency. Sean McVay is coming back as head coach, so they don't have to worry about him retiring, going to broadcasting and all that, at least for this coming year in September. They should be able to address most of their needs through the draft. This year they'll have a second round pick compared to last year where they blew their load and then they had to wait till late in the third round to start drafting shit. So at least this year they'll have a solid amount of picks this time around, and in free agency they'll probably have to like restructure some contracts to get something going. They also hope to have Matthew Stafford back for the offseason when the offseason program starts, and if he's healthy enough to do it. And well, like I said, obviously it's not the season the Rams are hoping for in terms of defending their Super Bowl title, but if they can avoid the injury bug to its starters and address the offensive line, most importantly, then perhaps the Rams can get back to competing in the NFC West and perhaps competing for a playoff spot in the NFC.